Right, United fans, we really need to talk about Antony. He arrived in the summer as one of Erik Ten Hag's crown jewels, costing a whopping £85 million. With a price tag like that, we all expected him to burst onto the scene and be one of United's key players this season, and so far, he hasn't quite been the star player that the Red Devils needed him to be. There are plenty of question marks around the Brazilian right now, so will he end up living up to the hype in the Premier League? Join us today as we explore what's gone right and wrong with the Brazilian winger so far this season, and stick around until the end where we'll show the overlooked reason as to why Ten Hag loves him. What's gone wrong? When he joined from Ajax in the summer, Antony was considered one of the world's most exciting youngsters. Type his name into YouTube and you'll see millions of compilations showing off his skill moves. He would glide down the wing effortlessly, flip-flapping and stepping over anyone in his path. But despite all of that natural ability, he never tries to take on any defenders in the Premier League. In the Eredivisie last season, Antony completed an average of 2.2 dribbles past opponents per game, but in this campaign for United, his average is 1.3 per 90. That's a huge drop, and it doesn't even put him in the top 50% of wingers in the league in terms of beating players with his dribbling. And we're not really sure why he's been so ineffective. Sure, he's pulled off a couple of trademark spins, but we're yet to see him do any big skill moves. It's not like he has a new manager telling him not to express himself. Erik Ten Hag was of course his manager at Ajax too. Many people have picked up on the fact that Antony has been playing so cautiously. He even caught flack from Rio Ferdinand, who spoke about him on his podcast. The Premier League legend said, "He just doesn't beat anyone," and I'm sitting there thinking, was that always the way? I've seen clips of him when he was at Ajax and he used to beat people. He's a tricky winger, but with tricky wingers you want them to still be able to beat the defender. Antony was particularly poor going forward in United's recent loss to Arsenal. His performance annoyed Sky Sports pundits, especially Gary Neville. The former fullback said, "I want to see a bit more from Antony. I think to have to take him off is a disappointment because you like to think that he could have been the one to counter-attack for United. It's just not quite happening for him at this moment in time. He's got a bit of work to do. He's obviously got some growth to go through." Do you think it's really been that bad for Antony so far, football fans? We don't think it's time to panic yet, and we think it's just a confidence problem. Right now, he seems a little scared to take risks, with so many eyes watching him both in the stadium and on TV. He gets dispossessed a lot more, and doesn't try to dribble anywhere near as often. And here's another issue. He has no right foot. This one isn't as easy as just getting some more confidence. For all of us who don't watch the Eredivisie, Antony tricked us by pretending that he doesn't just use one foot when he plays. He even tricked EA, who gave him a 3-star weak foot on Ultimate Team this year. When you watch the Brazilian, it becomes clear very quickly that he pretty much refuses to use his right foot, and that's not ideal considering that Ten Hag has deployed him as a right winger at times this season. It forces him to waste time by moving the ball onto his stronger foot. All 3 of Antony's magical Premier League goals have come from his left foot so far this season. While they've all been spectacular strikes, especially his debut one against Arsenal, there's no denying that this is still a problem. You should be able to be confident on both feet if you're a Premier League player, let alone a footballer of Manchester United's calibre. But surprisingly, some fans of the Red Devils don't even seem to care. Loads of United supporters argued that it wasn't an issue on Twitter earlier on in this season. They said it didn't stop him from doing what he needed to be doing, and used his brilliant lefty goals as an example. User diehard United even compared his one-footed nature to Robben. Antony has scored some bangers, but he's only managed to score 3 in the English top flight so far in his career. His left foot is glorious, sure, but if he wants to score more and reach that world-class level to fulfill his potential, he really needs to get confident on his weaker foot. Could you imagine how good he would be if his other foot was as good as his strong one? Let's move on to another question mark. Pace. When watching him play in the Champions League for Ajax, Antony used to bomb down the pitch. The forward would dip and dive past players with enough stamina to seemingly sprint for days. It was blink and you'll miss it stuff. But since arriving in England, we haven't really seen that from the winger. He runs a lot less and seems a lot more cautious with his movement in behind. United legend Paul Scholes tried to sum it up earlier on this season. He said, "He's a bit of a one-trick pony. He doesn't run in behind, he's always cutting inside and either passing back or having a shot. He needs to develop a little bit." While Antony's dribbling has been good over the last few years, Scholes is right in saying that he needs to improve those areas. In fact, we think he even seems to play a bit similar to Jack Grealish. When he gets the ball, he has to come to a complete stop before he can change gear and sprint forward. It slows down most of the Red Devils' counterattacks and makes Antony seem snail-like in comparison to some of the fullbacks he tries to beat. He then gets doubled up on, and that's when he has no choice but to pass backwards, since he's pretty much cornered himself in. This didn't seem to be a problem during his Dutch days, and we hope it won't be a problem for too much longer. But despite his shortcomings, there's a solid reason why Ten Hag loves to start him, and it's an overlooked one that you might not have realised. Defensive duties. Antony never shies away from tracking back. He takes pride in his defensive orders from Ten Hag and has been reliable for the United backline. The forward averages 1.5 successful tackles per game. That's better than 70% of Premier League forwards. Antony is also really efficient when he presses. He helps United defend from the front, chasing down his opposite number and constantly putting the fullback ahead of him under pressure. There is rhyme and reason when he closes down, and that's essential to Ten Hag's style. And while he maybe hasn't lived up to his price tag, Antony was an important signing in allowing the new United boss to implement his style of play. The winger came in and knew exactly what he had to do defensively. He helped guide the Red Devils towards their new philosophies and the method behind the madness. That's why Ten Hag loves picking him, since Antony knows exactly what is required of him. And at the end of the day, let's cut the forward some slack. Giving him time. Rome wasn't built in a day. Not every single player who comes to the English top flight is Erling Haaland. Most of them take at least half a season to warm up to cold and windy nights in Stoke. And Antony has only made 11 Premier League appearances for Manchester United. In his first 11 games for Ajax, he'd only scored 4 goals. And we can all agree that the Premier League is way ahead of the Dutch top flight, right, football fans? The Brazilian is clearly a player who needs some time to adapt to his new surroundings. 3 goals in his first few games isn't a bad return for a young 22-year-old winger. In fact, if he didn't cost so much money, we wouldn't even expect much more from the youngster. He's a developing forward who will need time to build up the confidence needed to play in the world's biggest league. He isn't brave enough to take risks and be himself just yet. If we still need to talk about Antony and have this conversation in a year's time, then he'll have proved the haters right. But we think he's on the cusp of greatness, and we think he'll show it to Erik Ten Hag before the season ends. Do you think Antony will evolve into a beast for Manchester United? Let us know in the comments.